Let's bring you some news just coming out of Washington, where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has now passed a key hurdle to become America's next health secretary. Voting along clear party lines, 14 Republicans voted to endorse his nomination and 13 Democrats voted against. Now, Kennedy is a highly controversial choice for health secretary by President Trump. He has a record of vaccine skepticism. However, during his questioning by the Finance Committee at the Senate last week, he insisted he is not anti-vaccine. Well, let's speak to our Washington correspondent live on the programme about this. Fraser Jackson is with me now. Fraser, just tell us a bit more about what has happened within the last few minutes.
Well, it all really came down to one Republican vote that we had our eyes on, Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, who had some doubts about whether he was going to vote RFK's way, but ultimately it appears that he has sided with his party. The pressure of a re-election next year potentially getting to him there. Now, it's clear now that the real question here was whether this would pass. RFK Jr. had now become the most controversial of Donald Trump's cabinet picks. Of course, there were others that were put forward. I'm thinking of Pete Hegseth, who got confirmed to be the Secretary of Defense, and Tulsi Gabbard, whose fate is still up in the air. But it is now expected that Donald Trump's votes will all get through to cabinet. Now, if you cast your minds back just a couple of weeks ago, we were in a situation where we believed that there would be some major pushback against some of these nominations. Well, it appears that resistance has really crumbled, perhaps signaling that Donald Trump's grip on the Republican Party really is total at this point. So RFK Jr. now is going to advance to the main Senate floor, but of course his record is still causing concern for a lot of Democrats. His history of anti-vaccine statements, his stance on abortion was seen as perhaps alienating some Republicans, but he will now go through to that main Senate floor vote to decide whether he will or will not become the head of the health department.
And look, if he is successful, Fraser, and he does become the top American health official, what do you think changes in the United States in terms of its health policy?
Well, there's significant things that I think most people would argue would be good for America. He's promised to wage war on the junk that gets put into food, into processed foods, and he's promised to look into things that could really impact the American diet. So I think most people would agree that those kind of things are positive changes. But it is when it comes to things like vaccines that people are most worried. He has had a history of being included with anti-vax groups. He's been involved in various lawsuits against a vaccine as well, which he was asked to divest those kind of interests from during his confirmation hearing. So the future of vaccinations and also pandemic preparedness will also be brought into question as well. Of course, we are just 5 years out from that pandemic which changed the world, and the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and the National Institute of Health both played key roles in the American response to that pandemic. And Robert Kennedy's nomination, should he be approved by the Senate, could ultimately shape and reshape the way that those agencies work. Of course, that's something that we're seeing across the entire government with the way Donald Trump's executive orders are reshaping the contours of the American government. So some significant changes could potentially be in the offing here if he does indeed get nominated and confirmed.